A major Copilot vulnerability, Meta's AI glasses got worse, Apple sends out a record number of spyware alerts, and more. All this and some good news coming up on This Week in Privacy 67, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to This Week in Privacy, everyone. This is our weekly series where we discuss the latest updates with what we're working on within the Privacy Guides community and this week's top stories that we've seen in the data privacy and cybersecurity space. Well, we answer viewer questions like yours. I'm Jonah, and with me this week is our wonderful video producer, Jordan. Jordan, how are you today?
I'm good, ready to dive into some stories this week, and yeah, it's definitely an exciting week. We've got a lot of stories to cover.
Sweet. Well, let's get the comments up here. As always, if you have any questions about the stuff that we're talking about or just questions in general, we'll try to get to questions in between stories that we see in the chat or in our members only Signal group or on the forum. We'll try and keep an eye on all of them. So yeah, definitely send those in if you are wondering anything that you want us to talk about anything. We are happy to do so. Otherwise, we're going to start out with some of the news. Our main story here was reported by Ars Technica. Their headline is Microsoft Copilot reveals secret input that allowed it to be hacked. Researchers at security firm Varonis knew that they wanted to create an exploit that would exfiltrate user data when a user did nothing more than click on a link. Like most AI assistants today, Copilot steadfastly refused and made clear that sensitive prompts like that require explicit user consent in the form of a gesture such as pressing a return key or other key. In response, the researchers peppered Copilot with questions about the guardrails that required user confirmation before the assistant could execute powerful commands. The dialogue was like a game of 20 questions. It says each answer provided a new clue that divulged information about the complex safety mechanism that Copilot had. Why was auto execution impossible? They asked. What URL structures in deep links were involved? What happens when a page is loaded with input already in the prompt field? Each answer that Copilot gave provided a deeper view into the guardrail and its limits. Eventually, Copilot provided a stunning Microsoft trade secret, an undocumented prompt parameter that completely bypassed the requirement for user consent. The parameter was the string autorun equals 1. When you add that to a URL, the researcher's prompt silently fired the moment the target clicked on the malicious URL. Microsoft silently mitigated the vulnerability in February, 3 months after Varonis reported it, by no longer allowing the Q equals query to inject text into the chatbot input. The user instead had to click and type manually, a requirement that prevented third-party browser extensions from using the parameter as intended. Microsoft then introduced more comprehensive fixes on Tuesday. Separately, Varonis devised another attack that used a prompt injection embedded in a web page to poison the Copilot permanent memory store, which saves user information, preferences, and instructions so that they can be used in future sessions without having to enter them each time. When a user instructed Copilot to summarize the page, the assistant followed instructions hidden in the page metadata to update the memory. The security firm said such an attack could be used to forward outputs, filter information, bias responses towards attacker-chosen narratives, or execute attacker-defined actions on trigger conditions. It's worth mentioning that earlier this week, this is from another Ars Technica article, researchers outlined an attack that used a secret input provided by Microsoft 360 Copilot for Enterprise that caused the AI assistant to exfiltrate a password that was present in the user's inbox, and a separate team has devised a similar attack against Grok. So a lot of dangerous stuff with Copilot. This is another case of basically it revealing information that it already had that it's not supposed to tell people about. Kind of the problem we've seen with a lot of LLMs, which is just that their security guardrails are basically the company's saying, pretty please don't do all of these things that we don't want you to do. So yeah, it's an interesting stuff. You can basically, I mean, they basically just found out all of this by asking Copilot questions over and over until they found something. Did anything stick out to you, Jordan, when you read this story?
I think the most like interesting thing about this is like, I think it's kind of telling when they call it guardrails, right? When you think of guardrails, like it's not really it's meant to stop the amount of damage, right? It's like it's a proactive measure. I think it's really interesting at the end of this article. Dan Gooden wrote something. Ultimately, attacks like CoSnitch and Microsoft's statement are reminders that LLM security is largely built on a list of reactive restrictions rather than building a road with banked turns that proactively prevent a car from veering off a cliff. LLM developers are guardrails that they hope will minimize harm when things go bad. So, like, we could also ask, why does it have like such massive access in the first place? Maybe like granting something that is not quite, I don't know, it doesn't seem to, I guess, it seems like a silly amount of control to give something that's not very controllable.
Microsoft, all of this auto run stuff kind of strikes again because they love to build this into Windows too. So it's like the Windows XP days. You had auto run when you plug in a USB device or run a CD and stuff like that. And I think computers doing anything that you don't like expect them to do is a problem. But Microsoft loves to do random things like that, and of course it continues to cause issues. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. All of this, I mean, we've talked about this before though. All of the AI stuff, it's a lot. It seems like it just causes more problems than it solves, especially in like cases like this on the more consumer side of things, where it's just like integrated into the system fully and has access to all this stuff, like you said. It's definitely not ready for prime time, at the very least, I would say that.
Yeah, and I think this kind of highlights the thing that I think most people should be proceeding with this technology with caution, right? Like this story kind of makes it clear that this technology is not particularly trustworthy to just be running random things on your computer without your consent. Like it shouldn't be something that you just allow it to do. You shouldn't allow it to like arbitrarily run commands. You shouldn't allow it to like control your system without you first checking what it does. I think, yeah, obviously this one is a little yikes because it was only a single click, but like I think disabling these features where you can is probably the best method to try and avoid this, because it does seem like AI, we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but like I think AI is just one of those things you can't really trust it to run things by itself. You really do need to check what it's doing because it can do things that you don't intend.
Yeah, or just disable these features entirely, at least the auto run component, because this sort of like phishing and these malicious links are only going to become more and more of a problem. Absolutely.
Yes. I guess we can dive into some forum questions that we had here. Did we have any questions on the forum currently? Looks like we don't.
I think on that forum we don't.
If anyone has any questions and things that they want answered, then we got a question here from CB Parker I on YouTube. Secrets management was already tricky, but we haven't solved this problem yet for AI agents, though there are a lot of companies trying to work it out. It is interesting. It does seem like a lot of password managers are moving in that direction now.
Yeah, well, at least I've seen 1Password is kind of branching into that. There's a lot of secrets management for like agentic programs. Basically, everyone is really into making things for AI agents these days. I haven't really seen any like good solutions to this, because at the end of the day, like the LLM is getting access to all of that sensitive information, and hopefully a system like that is able to stop it from auto running. So there's some user interaction involved that's kind of enforced by a system other than Copilot itself or whatever AI you're using. I mean, this is a big issue with like the guardrails in place on all of these products right now, Copilot in this case, but pretty much from any AI company, it's that the LLM basically just checks like what it's outputting against its own prompt and then tries to like self-police itself, which isn't like a really strong preventative measure, obviously, as we can see here. Whereas if like to access secrets or anything like that, if it had to query another system that is not just vibe coded and providing things like when asked, if it actually like has some sort of authorization process in place, that would certainly be a lot better of a situation than it is now. But that doesn't seem to be a really big concern, at least for these big tech companies like Microsoft and OpenAI and Claude, because ultimately they want to cut the users, the people, out of the equation entirely. So building in more prompts that require user interaction is not in their best interests. So how they balance that, it's a tricky thing for sure.
I think it's really interesting. You did mention that second story about Grok, and they did talk a little bit more about this. This is kind of interesting with how the guardrails work. Basically, they kind of read content as text. So like if something is generating code and stuff like that, it's not being checked against guardrails and stuff. So there's always ways for this, like for these guardrails that they put in place to like protect people to be bypassed. And it does seem like this is just another attack vector that keeps being exploited. We keep seeing it like websites containing text that is when it's read by an AI executes like malicious content and stuff like that. It just keeps happening. So yeah, I'm not really sure if there's an actual security solution to something like this, because it keeps at least I haven't seen one. It keeps happening over and over again. So yeah, it's tough. I think it's more of one of those things where it's better to avoid it than to use it at this point.
Yeah, it's tricky though, because like Microsoft and Google to some extent, they're kind of the main providers of Office software, at least for the enterprise workspace. You got Google Drive and you got Microsoft Office and Outlook, and all of these companies kind of piping in all of their email and all of their data into these systems. And then they're really like enabling a lot of these AI features by default. And I think that is going to cause a lot of security issues, because like all of these systems having access to all that data, that is going to be exfiltrated at some point, and that'll cause a lot of problems for companies. So definitely something to stay on top of. It's a bit less of a problem if you're not like funneling all of your data into these systems, but even on like, which you might not be if you don't have a business like Google Workspace or whatever, but even personally, Gemini can link up to your Gmail, or especially if you're using Windows right now, Copilot in Windows has a lot of access to information. Windows is also saving a lot of information that you're doing all of the time in like Windows Microsoft Recall, so they can kind of get screenshots and in everything that you've typed and everything, and certainly other programs on your computer can access that. So there's just a lot of data collection going on, especially in the Microsoft world right now, that is very dangerous for security and privacy.
Definitely. I guess we can kind of dive into another AI story, I guess. This one here is from 404 Media, and it's about Meta moving to patent AI glasses that use facial recognition to identify people and make highlight reels of your dinner party. So as usual, Meta is trying to be as creepy as possible. Meta has filed a patent for its AI smart glasses that uses facial recognition to automatically detect who is in the frame, creating a video clip whenever one of those people does something, like picking up an item or walking around, and then generates a highlight reel of what just happened, according to a copy of the patent published Thursday. One example given is the system capturing highlights from a dinner party and then serving those up to the user. One section says the system may personalize highlight files using user relationship data. Although the patent is for particular camera-based tasks by particular systems in a particular manner, in this case, the company's smart glasses, Meta writes it contemplates assisting users in any suitable camera-based task by any suitable system in any suitable manner, which is, it's interesting. These patents are always kind of legalese a little bit, but meaning that although this technology is focused on the glasses, maybe the company will use it for other purposes in the future. It is also not clear if these ideas will ultimately make their way into a final product or update for the glasses. So, yeah, this is, again, Meta being, like, we thought that Meta's, like, AI glasses already were kind of creepy because, you know, you can record people in public without their consent. And we've already seen it be used to harass people and record people without their consent. And, you know, adding this extra layer of creepiness about, like, you know, automatically recording people using AI to, like, identify people who are being recorded. It's all really creepy stuff. But yeah, how do you feel about this one, Jonah?
Oh, it just gives me a headache. Everything that Meta is doing. Yeah, they seem pretty hell-bent on making their pervert glasses, as a lot of people have started calling them, as invasive as possible. Yeah, it's I wonder how they're gonna, I mean, I'm sure they have all of this data, of course. Facebook and Meta, they famously claimed to get rid of like a ton of facial recognition stuff years ago, which I would think would help with like identifying people in the room if you have access to a database like Facebook. So how they're going to do this isn't exactly clear, at least as far as I've seen. Or maybe it'll just be, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, the whole always on recording stuff is a big problem. And I don't really know what we're gonna do about it besides continue to tell people not to wear these. It's unfortunate that society has kind of changed a bit since like the Google Glass days, because when Google Glass came out famously, there was a lot of backlash against that in recording in public in general. I think people want to go outside and not be recorded all the time. And now that just isn't talked about as much. And it's kind of a similar thing with like flock cameras everywhere, which is less of like a personal invasion of privacy sort of thing like these glasses, but it's still like tracking you anytime you go outside, right, or in public. You're now at risk of all of this recording going on, and that data basically lasting forever and being used for all sorts of purposes. So yeah, that's not good, I can tell you that. But I don't know how many people care that much. I mean, we posted some stuff about Flock in the past, and doesn't get a ton of traction. Of course, we don't have a super American audience in general, but also outside of like news reports and stuff, I don't know if a lot of people are even aware that this is an issue in the first place. And then beyond that, like how much people care about this yet, you know? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's kind of interesting about this story is it kind of harkens back. I don't know if you remember in 2024, there was a story that broke about these students that basically like did exactly what Meta is doing here. They used two Harvard students used Meta Ray-Bans to access personal information. So basically, they kind of went viral when they demonstrated how they could use Meta's Ray-Ban smart glasses to access personal information of people on Harvard's campus, including age, name, home address, phone number, etc. I think that sort of thing is kind of highlights that this is like a really dangerous technology. Like, of course, Meta's going to say, you know, this is used in a safe way. You know, we're not using this to track people. We're not using this to, like, you know, create a database of what you're doing and everything and like that. But you know, it's been shown that this technology can be used for a malicious purpose. And I think if Meta's saying it's only used for this very specific purpose of, you know, creating highlight reels, it's like it's hard to take it seriously, especially when, you know, someone malicious could use this technology for very, like, nefarious purposes. And I think, you know, it could, you know, even be used to identify people, and, you know, like, create a sort of database of people that are interacting with each other, which is also really concerning. But I think this is, yeah, again, like, we thought that this was something that would never happen, but it seems like every time we say that, it keeps happening and it keeps getting to a more extreme point. Yeah, so Firewall Don't Stop Dragons just left a comment in the YouTube chat. The backlash movement against Flock has been growing. This week is a national week of action. Yes, it's been good seeing people mobilizing on the ground.
Yeah, it definitely is picking up. Thanks for highlighting that. Let me try and pull up if I can get things working here. Sorry, kind of complicated. But yeah, the week of action is a good thing to point out. You can go to noalprs.com. Something that Nate worked on recently. We just republished it. If I can figure out how to get StreamYard working. We just published a kind of explainer about Flock, what it is, to share with people who may not be super familiar with it yet. This is on the Privacy Activism channel, which is separate, but we shared it with the other channel as well. We have some other resources related to Flock currently that you could check out if you want, or share with a friend. But yeah, no ALPRs. If only I had it pulled up, but I wasn't thinking about this. Oh, you got it. Yeah, you can go to noalprs.com, and there's information about local groups, so you can find one in your area that may be organizing against Flock cameras or other ALPR cameras in your city, because of course Flock isn't the only company who are making these systems. They are just the most well-known one right now, but you don't want to reject Flock in your area and then switch to another identical system from like Motorola or some other company. So yeah, definitely check that out if all of the Flock stuff is concerning to you. And yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Carrie. Very, very good to continue keeping an eye on all the Flock stuff.
Definitely. I guess we've kind of talked a little bit more about, you know, the Meta AI glasses stuff. Maybe we can dive into a forum post here.
Yeah, let's take. Oh, none of my browsers are working today. I can't switch between tabs. What is going on? Okay, we do have a forum post that we saw. Got some discussion this week. This was a post from Brave, basically. Their post said Brave improves protections against GPU fingerprinting. So starting in version 1.93, Brave is rolling out new protections against GPU and graphics driver fingerprinting, de-identifying WebGL vendor and renderer strings, and adding noise to the list of supported extensions. How this works wasn't super clear to me. I mean, they made a lot of changes. I know that historically a large issue with like WebGL in general, and the first reply on our forum about this pointed exactly this out. But like differences in rendering behavior itself can identify, like if you're using an NVIDIA GPU or an Apple GPU or whatever, for example, regardless of like what strings and like device information is being reported by the device, you can kind of just tell all of these GPUs process the data very slightly differently, and you can get some information about that. However, all of this additional randomization is always a good thing, and it's good that Brave continues to work on this because, I mean, their approach is definitely different than what we see like Firefox and Tor browser do. Brave does more randomization stuff, and there's pros and cons to both approaches, but Brave definitely is a lot more user friendly than some of the more locked down configurations of Firefox, I would say. So it probably is going to get better protections in the hands of more people, and against like 99% of threats that people are going to be facing when they browse the internet, especially like to privacy. You're thinking mainly like ad tracking networks and stuff like that. All of the protections that Brave has are gonna stop all of that very significantly. So any improvement on that is good, but I think they provide pretty good protection already. So yeah, it's it's good.
I think the biggest thing that I think Brave does that separates them a little bit from like the Firefox forks and the Firefox developers is that they kind of at least try to keep functionality.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like a lot of stuff with Firefox, especially with, Mullvad browser and Tor browser, basically everything that can fingerprint you is disabled, which I guess makes sense because you're limiting, that's just completely removing an entire data point, right? But like also people need to use the internet and you need to access websites that use WebGL content. So if there's a way to do that in a way that's, not sharing as much information that's making you identifiable, then I think that is definitely a positive thing.
Brave is definitely like good. They're good at finding that middle ground because this is a huge problem that I have with Mozilla and Firefox in general, which is like not only do the protections require you disable things if you want to have the highest protections, but also like the default states when they are enabled have like they're pretty much wide open in terms of privacy violations in a lot of cases, and they just don't provide any protections at all. And they enable so much stuff by default in Firefox now that is pretty questionable. And yeah, it's really unfortunate. I haven't used Firefox itself in quite a while. I've still been using Zen browser, which is controversial because people don't like these forks of products, and people have a lot of opinions about things like Zen browser or even things like LibreWolf, which a lot of people use, and then a lot of people are very against using because of issues with like update times and release times. But it is very difficult, I think, to continue trusting Mozilla to release normal defaults in new updates of Firefox. And so at least like being able to update my browser without having to check all of my settings every time I think it's pretty convenient. So I think there is some room for these Firefox forks. And I think there's definitely a good reason to be using Brave. I've been using Brave a bit more. I'm still waiting for, they have some features that I want that other browsers do, like different workspaces that they've begun to implement, but they haven't finished yet, unfortunately. So I can't switch to it, but it'd be nice. It's tricky for work because Google is kind of making the Firefox experience on all of YouTube terrible right now, so I have to use Brave. So that's more of a Google issue than anything else.
Yeah, it's also kind of interesting to see the different paths that browsers are taking right now. Like we constantly see, Brave like releasing these changes to like improve privacy for everyone. Like this is not something that's going to be a toggle. This is going to be like the default setting, right? And then, Firefox is like working on an AI window for their browser. Like that's the last thing that I saw. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Firefox later
Oh
in the
boy.
show because they've been doing some stuff, right? That is positive, but also, we don't really see them making these industry leading changes to their browser that increases privacy for everybody. It's much less common to see that sort of thing coming from Mozilla and Firefox at the moment because they seem to be they almost seem like they're at odds with their users a lot of times. I constantly see on the Mozilla, like Firefox, Reddit, constantly see people complaining about every new Firefox update. So I think it's just interesting to see the different directions that they're both taking. But I think this is definitely kind of huge for everyone who's using Brave right now. Just so you know, we've rolled out these protections across nightly and beta channels over the last few months, and are optimistic that our approach reduces the chances of breakage on most websites. So I guess it'll be interesting to see. It doesn't appear to be. Is this released to the public channel? I'm not sure. It doesn't say that. So.
I don't know when 1.93 comes out. I was looking at the Chromium releases the other day, and I think it's still... Oh no, well, my Brave is on 1.93 right now, so I guess it has finally made it. We were on 1.91 for a really long time. I was waiting for that to get out of beta for Brave Origin, but it looks like that is the official build at the moment, so that must have just released recently.
Perfect.
So awesome. Yeah, very cool. I think that's all I have to say about Brave. Before we move on to our next story here, somebody in our members only chat asked us about GrapheneOS and Motorola devices, and so I went and looked this up, and I found an article on Ars Technica here. This came out just 2 hours ago, so pretty new information. Ars Technica reports that Motorola's GrapheneOS phones will launch in 2027, priced higher than Google Pixels. They did not, I didn't see in this article what the exact pricing would be, but as Ars Technica pointed out, the current Pixel lineup is starting at $900 now for the base model, which is $100 more than last year. So presumably, given all of this, they're going to be over $1,000, which is crazy, but that might just be the world that we are getting into in the consumer space because of these AI companies buying all the RAM, so that all of these device manufacturers literally just can't sell any of this. They also confirmed that the Motorola devices won't ship with GrapheneOS, but they're going to be fully supported by GrapheneOS, and Motorola is helping them out with that support, unlike Google, who I don't know when we talked about this, but I was talking about this on the forum with someone recently, and Google is kind of like actively fighting GrapheneOS and other custom ROM support these days. They're just locking more things down, more of the source code behind very convoluted systems. I saw GrapheneOS made some posts on X about like needing to manually request Google Drive downloads of the source code of Android releases in order to work on them, instead of them just being available in a source code repository like all other projects. And Google switching to like twice yearly releases for Android will prevent them from, developing new things. It'll prevent custom ROM developers from taking advantage of all these new features more quickly. We saw last year with the Pixel 10 that it took 3 months after launch for the Pixel 10 to be supported. So if the Pixel 11 is going to be supported at all, I don't know. I haven't seen anything from GrapheneOS yet about whether they will be supporting it. I know that they're looking into it at the very least, but I would imagine they're probably looking at a similar process to what it was with the Pixel 10, where they kind of just have to do everything themselves because Google is not helping them out as much anymore. The situation has certainly only gotten worse since the Pixel 10 came out, so I definitely wouldn't be buying a Pixel 11 anytime soon if you're hoping for GrapheneOS support at the very least. But yeah, this Motorola partnership definitely coming at a very good time. Yeah, no other confirmation than what we already know about Motorola and GrapheneOS, I believe. They have to be flagship products because the lower end chips in the budget phones probably just don't support the security features that GrapheneOS would be asking for. So it makes sense. And I think a lot of people were hoping that they would at least be the same price as Pixels. Them being even more is a bit tough because Pixels are quite expensive. But yeah, I mean, we can always hope that they are working on something more like a Pixel A series device that'll come in at more of a budget. But I would imagine Motorola probably doesn't want to like fully commit the support for GrapheneOS across all of these different devices. So it makes sense that they would focus on like one flagship device, at least at first, and go from there. So kind of expected. Hopefully it's not like $2,000 or something like that, something crazy. Hopefully it's like a normal amount, but it is pretty disappointing. I can imagine why a lot of people would be disappointed. And yeah, I think until Google like completely prevents GrapheneOS from being run on Pixel devices, probably a Pixel 10 is still going to be the best choice for a while. I think, if they can get it running on the Pixel 11, even when this Motorola device comes out, the Pixel 11 may still be a better device for a lot of people, just because they're just more tested. I mean, we know more about the security of the Pixel devices right now. All of the Motorola stuff is just kind of speculation at this point. So yeah, I don't know. GrapheneOS users, let me know what you think about this. I saw somebody in the chat already said they're disappointed. Yeah, it's a shame, but at least there are more options. Certainly more competition is good, even if it's not perfect yet.
Yeah, I think the thing that a lot of people are concerned about with this is that it's like, Motorola is specifically known for making cheaper devices and like making more budget-friendly devices, and also being like, a Chinese company. They kind of expected the prices to be lower. So I think that is one reason why people are kind of shocked that it's more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm just not that shocked because I knew it'd have to be their higher end stuff, but it is disappointing that it's coming in even more, at the very least. I wasn't expecting a budget GrapheneOS phone anytime soon. I think there's still a ways to go before that'll happen, unfortunately. But it would be very cool because it getting into the hands of more people would be good. I think the Motorola partnership makes a lot of sense, not just because it'll be easier for GrapheneOS to support these phones because they're getting actual assistance, but also Motorola is certainly available in more countries than Pixels are. I think that's a common complaint that we see about the Google Pixels right now, which is just like people can't buy them unless they get it from like some weird third-party dealer or used or whatever, but it's just not available in a lot of places. And hopefully Motorola is making enough of these phones, or like this is going to be a major product for Motorola regardless of GrapheneOS, that encourages them to like distribute this phone more broadly. I would hope that this will be like not only a GrapheneOS business phone, but it'll be like the next Motorola flagship or something that they just sell in stores and to carriers and stuff. That would be, I think, the ideal situation. So hopefully we see something like that.
I guess one concern that we've seen in the US is, companies that are, because Motorola is owned by Lenovo, who is a Chinese company. I guess could that be a concern for like US adoption, perhaps? Like we've seen already some Chinese companies banned in the US. Is that something that could happen with Motorola, or do you not think that would happen?
That is a good question. I actually have not heard anything about that. And now I'm wondering if Motorola still has headquarters in the US. I know that hasn't stopped them from targeting other companies that have like offices and stuff here, but are like made in China. But I know that certainly a lot of Chinese companies have gotten exceptions to this too. And I think for Motorola, more than some of these other companies, the US market is probably important enough that they would try and do whatever it takes to stay in the US. I don't know if that is something that they're being pressured about right now, though. That is a good question.
Yeah, I think it'll be. There was just reading some of the comments from people on the Ars Technica article. It does seem like some people had some concerns about that. Specifically, I know some people, like there was definitely a lot of people saying that they wished it was, a European company instead. But
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of hard. You don't really get to choose which OEM you get to work with. You kind of just go with whoever's willing, and I guess it's not particularly easy to find someone who wants to work with you. So
It's a shame that I wish like Nothing Phone would partner with them. They seem like an obvious choice. The phone company, they were originally, I don't know if they ever confirmed this, but like I think it's well known now that GrapheneOS allegedly was going to be working with the company that like the people from Essential founded after, and then that phone ended up turning into like a Solana cryptocurrency phone instead of a security and privacy focused phone, which I think disappointed a lot of people. Certainly disappointed me, because I think that that would have been a good option that wasn't from like a major OEM but could have supported GrapheneOS better before they kind of sold out to cryptocurrency and died. I don't know if anyone even bought that phone, but yeah, stuff like that is very disappointing. At least it's going somewhere. And maybe we'll just be in a situation where people in the US get to run GrapheneOS on Pixels, and then everywhere else in the world people will buy Motorola phones and we won't have the option here. I don't know.
yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. And we've got to wait till 2027. So sometime in 2027. It doesn't say specifically when in 2027, but it just says in 2027. So at least now we do have some date, which is fast approaching. So maybe we'll hear more information about this in the future, but we'll definitely keep everybody updated if we hear more.
It is worth noting Motorola is based in Chicago. Whether that will help them, I don't know, but most of their staff is here. But with manufacturing abroad, they'll probably have issues just like everyone else.
Okay. Yeah, that is interesting. I guess they're technically, the US, a US company owned by a Chinese company. So I guess that is a bit more of a different situation than the ones that have been banned previously. So
yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, so let's take a look here. I haven't seen another question. Do you want to grab the next story we have up here?
Yeah, so we did get someone in our Privacy Guide supporter chat also ask about this story, but we were planning on covering it anyway. So here's what we're talking about this time. It's Android 17 QPR2 adds app lock to the Google Pixel. So when you long press an application, the actions menu will give you the option to select app lock, which basically will require you to use your fingerprint or PIN to unlock the application before it can be opened. And basically, Google explains, if we scroll down on this article here, it explains that notification content will be hidden, widgets and shortcuts will be removed, but AI agents and services you've allowed to access the app will still be able to access the data. So I guess this is kind of interesting. This is like a feature that iOS has had for, I think, since iOS 18, I believe, which it's good to see, Google kind of catching up to this and adding this feature, because you should be able to lock any app, because, there could be sensitive information in there. Not every app gives that option natively. I know there's definitely some apps that do offer that, like Signal, for instance, does offer the ability to lock the app using a fingerprint, but having this built into the operating system is definitely a plus. I will wonder with this, though, we've been seeing Google kind of pushing a lot of these features into its proprietary Google services and proprietary like code. I do wonder if this will actually get pushed into GrapheneOS, because it does look like it might be something that's related to Google services. So I wonder about that. The article itself doesn't mention that, so that is certainly something interesting to watch out for. But I think this is definitely kind of a little bit of a boost for people that need to lock down their apps on their phone. And I think it's just another layer of security that we can all benefit from here.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was wondering that exact same thing. I would imagine it's going to be in AOSP because it's a very similar feature to like private spaces, which is also like an Android feature. So I would certainly hope that this could be easily adopted by like GrapheneOS, for example, or come to other phones. But I mean, even standard Android features don't always come to other Android phones because a lot of these OEMs like to reinvent the wheel basically and do their own thing. I have some Android phones that like have private spaces that work entirely differently from how private spaces work in the current version of Android, which is very annoying. So little stuff like that is unfortunate. But yeah, in this case, it's good that they're doing that. I use this feature quite a bit. It is interesting that a lot of this information would be prevented or isn't optional, because I can imagine situations where you might want to see like notification content, but you don't want to be able to have somebody open the whole thing. But this is certainly better than nothing. I'm really curious about what the process is to allow an AI agent or service to access the app, because AI agents and services, like you said, will still be able to access the data. What does that look like? Is there a prompt? What kind of access will they have, and what apps will be able to request that access? That would be my question. But I guess we'll see when it all comes out how that'll work.
It is like what we were talking about earlier when it comes to guardrails. They keep putting these things in that allow AI agents to access all this information, but it's like, we've got these security features. What should it be? It should probably not.
Yeah.
It should probably stop it from being accessed. Like it's not quite clear there why that would
because
be
like
bypassed.
in these example screenshots that they have, they're using it with like the Keep Notes app, which I think makes a lot of sense because you probably want to lock up all of your notes. But if Gemini can access that, presumably because they want you to be able to like say, hey, remind me, write a note to remind me later, like this to-do list or something. And they don't want to like prevent you from being able to write to it or read from it. But like, what information is going to be able to be read by Gemini? Is Gemini going to be able to like share all of your notes information because it can still access the data to anyone who asked? Like, what guardrails are going to be in place to prevent that sort of thing? And it doesn't seem like that letting AI agents and services that you've allowed to access locked apps, it doesn't seem like that will be like optional. Like you can just turn that off entirely for locked apps. Hopefully you can on a per app basis, but yeah, I just don't know how that AI integration works necessarily. Another thing is, and I can't fault Android too much for this because iOS doesn't do this, but it's a shame that you won't be able to like have a different PIN for all of these locked apps. Of course, if you want to like hide apps, or if you want to have a different PIN or password or biometrics, you can use the private space feature. So they would probably just say to use that. And this is more of like a biometric sort of thing. Like if your phone gets snatched out of your hand when it's unlocked, you can still protect some apps from being used if your face isn't in front of your phone or whatever. But yeah, a little bit more flexibility might have been cool. But this is certainly a cool feature. I'm glad that they're adding it to Android because I use it quite a bit on iOS right now. So it's nice.
I think one thing we should also mention just before we move on to the next topic here is this is scheduled to release, like QPR 2 is scheduled to release in December.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, that usually means that there's going to be a delay between when that comes out and then again, like GrapheneOS has to work out how to get that source code because it just kept happening that they weren't getting access to it. So hopefully they can get that implemented quickly for people.
Yeah, I
It
don't
hasn't.
know what the situation is like for them, like how far in advance they can get it, hopefully. I mean, GrapheneOS has still been keeping up with like Android updates and stuff, so hopefully it's not too much of an issue. But yeah, these longer periods between releases is not great.
Yeah. I guess we can dive into some site updates then. Yeah, so
Yeah.
before we dive into some some news about Apple's unprecedented number of spyware alerts, let's give you some quick updates about what we've been working on at Privacy Guides this week. So I guess I'll start here with videos that we're currently working on. Jonah put together a video on how to make a secure Bitcoin seed phrase. I guess maybe I'll throw it over to you to quickly explain a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, so we just published this video. Basically, I still have all this stuff on my desk. You can roll die a bunch of times to generate the random entropy that you need to get a Bitcoin private key and a 12-word seed phrase. Instead of trusting, the random number generator in your wallet to generate that for you. Of course, we talked about this on a previous show, but there was that vulnerability with cold card products where they basically just in the code disabled the random number generator for no reason, which caused all of those private keys to be a lot less than random, pretty easily guessed, and millions of dollars were stolen as a result. So if you don't want to trust some random developer making your wallet to do that properly, you can take at least this one component into your own hands and make sure that the underlying private key is secure by creating that randomness yourself and not using software at all. So I have a guide on how to do that now on our channel. If that is something interesting to you, definitely check it out. It's somewhat Bitcoin specific in the sense that like some cryptocurrencies like Monero have a different seed phrase system that you can't use it for. But if you use Monero with like a hardware wallet like Ledger or Trezor, then those are going to use the same 12-word system that I set up here and kind of derive your Monero key from that. So Monero users, if you're using a hardware wallet, which you should be anyways, if you have cryptocurrency, can still take advantage of this. So yeah, pretty crypto specific. We don't do a lot of cryptocurrency stuff here, but I didn't see a lot of easy to follow guides on how to do this. So I thought since all of that disastrous stuff happened for a lot of people in the Bitcoin space, we could at least put that out and make that a bit easier for people to follow. So yeah, that's kind of that.
Cool. Yeah, definitely check it out. I showed it a bit on screen, but you can check that out. It's linked in the newsletter if you're subscribed to that. And we're also working on a password tier list video. So that's kind of, ranking. We have our recommendations for what you should use, but also I think it's good to be able to see where everything kind of lands, especially if you're like on the fence about moving. Switching password managers can be kind of annoying. So especially if you're in a family situation, which, I think that is probably the worst case scenario. But definitely check out the password manager tier list, which is coming out soon. We're also working on a interview with Melanie Ensign. She's a very interesting person in the privacy and security space. And we'll have more information on that soon, but that's still in the pipeline. And we're also working on another Crypto Wars video because everyone seemed to really like the last one. It did really well, so we're kind of continuing that. Definitely give us feedback if you prefer certain types of videos, if you prefer, these sort of guide videos, or if you prefer, whatever you're enjoying so much on the channel. Definitely let us know in the comments or in the chat. But yeah, I guess I'll throw it back to you, Jonah, for more of the website site updates this week.
Yeah, I know Freya's been pushing some stuff through on GitHub, so we're getting a few more updates done, and we can hopefully update the site soon. I'm glad that people are liking that Bull Run video. I really like this more historical series that we're doing, looking at some of the history of like encryption and whether it was legal or not, or how the government was trying to stop people from using strong encryption for a while. I think we made the first 2 episodes pretty early on, I think, in the channel, and we just didn't have as much of a video audience at the time. So I'm glad that we're trying it again with a bit more of an audience, and now like it's really, like you said, people seem to really like it, and it's still doing quite well. It continues to get a lot of views, so I'm glad people are interested in the topic. But yeah, that whole series is pretty exciting. Other stuff as usual, Freya publishes a lot of the news stuff that we have at privacyguides.org/news. It kind of covers stuff that we didn't talk about as much on this show or couldn't talk about because we don't have time, because there's always stuff coming out every week. So we kind of put that site together basically to have one place where you can kind of stay up to date with even more of the stories that are going on. Nate also publishes a data breach roundup every week. I believe the next one will be coming out pretty soon because they come out every Friday. So you can sign up to get those emailed to your inbox, or you can just check the site when those come out. But yeah, it's with those data breach roundups again. There's just a lot more than you would expect. I mean, every week there's like a whole list that we have to send out. It just nonstop data breaches. And I think that really shows the importance of like why you need to use email aliasing services, why you need to use a password manager. Absolutely. Because, you got to make sure your information is different between all the sites that you visit. When all that, I mean, it's going to be leaked eventually. That's just the unfortunate reality. So making sure that all of that stuff isn't linked together, and like your credentials on one site that gets breached can't be used to log into your account on a completely different site. All of that is very good security hygiene that you should keep in mind. I don't know if I have any other updates. We, of course, continue to work on a bunch of form stuff. But all of the stuff that we have been publishing, all of those videos, the news articles on our site, other updates to the site, all of that is made possible by our supporters, and we would really appreciate you supporting us. If you aren't already, if you have the means to, you can sign up for a membership, or you can make a one-time donation at privacyguides.org/donate. We also have some swag at shop.privacyguides.org. Privacy Guides, this whole project, it's a nonprofit that researches and shares privacy-related information like this. We facilitate a community on our forum, which is massive, where people can ask questions and get advice about staying private online and preserving their digital rights. So, yeah, consider supporting us if you're able to. Otherwise, I think we'll move on. Again, before we do, I would remind people you're welcome to leave some questions or other comments in the chat if you want us to address things before we get to the end. We used to do Q&As like in the end segment, but we have begun like getting to them right away. So we will try and keep an eye on that if you send any. Anyways, Jordan, I think you have some good news about Firefox to share. So why don't you take us over to that?
Finally, some good news from Firefox. So let's kind of dive into this. This is a story about 1 billion searches a year now built in. Startpage comes to Firefox. So today, starting with Firefox 154, that choice becomes as easy as head to the drop-down menu, hit select, and start searching. Startpage is now a built-in search option for Firefox users on desktop in Germany, France, Austria, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. Android and iOS are coming soon. Queries aren't stored or linked to you, and there are no AI answers pushed above your search results. In fact, there's no AI at all. Startpage ranks among the most requested search engines in the Firefox community. Now, let's stop right there.
Yeah.
Is only available to users in Germany, France, Austria, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. What's going on? Why is this the case?
That is crazy. And like they said, it is one of their most requested search engines. So why they would just restrict it to a handful of European countries doesn't make sense. They say in this blog post that the launch in these countries is because Startpage is based in the Netherlands, and they wanted to have a search option that's quote private by design and European by origin. But of course, this certainly isn't all of the European countries. What are people in other European countries going to do if they want to have a European private search engine? That's unclear. Of course, you can always add custom search engines to Firefox, unlike Safari and iOS Apple. But not having this as a default option is crazy. Why they would region lock something as simple as another search engine option is crazy. But this is the kind of decision making at Mozilla that doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's just another case of, I mean, it's not like they're switching it by default to Startpage in these companies either. They're sticking with like Google being behind everything, because that's how they make a ton of money. So yeah, it is a shame. It's crazy that they didn't say like it's a limited rollout or anything, but I would hope that this would make it to other regions in the future. This does call into question how they're going to determine what country you're in. But yeah, I don't know. That kind of stuff is like why I just do not find Mozilla trustworthy at all, unfortunately. It's crazy.
I think it also makes you wonder, how exactly does this how does this happen? Like, is there money, like, I mean, of course there's probably money changing hands for them to get added, right? So perhaps they just didn't have enough money to be added globally, and that's like an expense that is just like kind of a
Mozilla
lot.
charges per country. Yeah, Mozilla's just, they're definitely not a consumer first company, which is crazy because like that was supposed to be their entire purpose. Terracotta Pie says maybe they want to test how people will take it or react to it. I mean, that is the hope. But like you would think if that was the case, they would say in their blog post, like, we're starting this as a launch in these countries, and then we're going to roll it out wider. And there's no mention of that at all.
They added complexity AI search.
It must be, yeah, this is what you pay for. In Startpage couldn't pay Perplexity AI levels of money. That is the only explanation that makes a lot of sense to me. So I think you're onto something with that one.
I think it's still positive, right? We recommend Startpage, so if it is easier to select, that's good. I think it's better that, you know, it's easy. It's kind of hard to add a search engine to your browser, and I think it honestly should be a bit easier to do that in the first place. Like, it shouldn't have to be kind of complex to do that. It should just be like a single click to add it. You know, let's say you go to startpage.com and there's like a pop-up and it says, do you want to use this as your default search engine? And you just click it, right? That kind of makes sense. But like, if it's something that kind of has to be added into the browser, or I know you can add custom search engines to Firefox, but it's kind of complicated and not many people are going to know how to do that. I think maybe it's better if there's just a way to add things a bit easier than having to rely on Startpage, just like giving a massive pile of money to Mozilla just to add their search engine in a couple of countries. It seems not the greatest solution.
I mean, it's just like one line of code for Mozilla to add. So it's not like this is something challenging. So revenue sharing is likely. I think the whole testing things out is pretty much not what is happening confirmed, because I clicked the link in their blog post to the Firefox community where they talked about this, and they tried they trialed the Startpage stuff in these 5 countries back in April. Basically, they said they were doing a 30-day experiment with Startpage in those 5 countries where you might see it in the address bar. Again, that was in April, and now this seems to be the result, which is just the exact same countries. They're not doing a broader rollout. So yeah, Just add it as a custom search engine, and remember that Mozilla is I don't know. I don't know what I want to say. I don't want to say terrible, but I don't like Mozilla at all. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's another related forum post that we had that we could kind of talk a little bit more if we want to talk a bit more about Firefox. And it was,
How do I
Firefox for
point
iOS.
to this? It only works on desktop. I can point to this comment. Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah. Okay, yes. Oh, yeah. I guess on the mobile versions, I guess you can't. Yeah. I didn't realize that actually. But yeah, so Firefox for iOS now has a built-in ad blocker. So, I mean, that's good, but I think,
Could it have this whole time?
could it just have uBlock Origin? I feel like I do kind of question them when they're like building these things into the browser itself when we have such good tools that already exist.
I really just gotta wonder how long Firefox can kind of focus or coast on like brand familiarity, because nothing that they've done lately, I can't imagine anything that they've done lately is like convincing new people to switch to Firefox. A lot of these decisions are like, how can we make money off of our Firefox users right now? Which again doesn't seem like the greatest business strategy to me. If I was in charge of Mozilla, I would do things quite a bit differently, but I'm not. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think there's not many. It's almost kind of hard to justify using Firefox at this point. Like it used to be like, oh, just use Firefox. Like don't use Chrome, use Firefox. And now it's like, oh, it kind of has a lot of the issues that Chrome has now. Like it's extremely bloated. It has a bunch of features that you don't need. It's got a bunch of settings you have to disable now. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that we've gone in that direction, where Firefox is kind of becoming kind of bad. I guess this topic here from the forum again, just kind of going back to that. It's just the ad blocker that they are building is based on Easy List, and again, like this sort of like it really does feel like this should have just been an integration with uBlock Origin. I think giving people more control over that.
Well, they don't want the people to have control because they built this ad blocker, as pointed out on the forum. It doesn't block. It doesn't block like ads on search engine results, for example, because that is where Firefox makes money from advertising almost exclusively. It's through their revenue sharing deals with these search engines. So of course they're not going to be blocked. It's just all of the other sites that Firefox doesn't have deals with will have ads blocked, which is kind of like a Brave browser's approach, except Brave had a program where like websites could opt into making some money. Firefox is just like, no money for you unless you're a search engine that pays us money. then you can advertise all you want. Yeah, I mean, all the ad blocking is good because not just ads in themselves isn't like the biggest problem. It's just the fact that they all embed advertising from a handful of companies like Google and Facebook, etc. Like all of this cross-site tracking is a big issue. But yeah, I think Mozilla's motivations with both of these features is pretty transparent to me. It's very clear why they developed this stuff. And it's a shame. There's better. Yeah. I mean, you can get uBlock Origin. I mean, well, uBlock Origin Lite in Safari if you're on iOS. So there's other options.
Yeah, I don't think we would ever, at least currently, the iOS browser recommendation is Safari. Like Safari is interesting, right? Like it does have some, fingerprint mitigations and stuff like that, which is interesting. That, as far as I know, other browsers on iOS can't use. So it's an interesting browser, but yeah, like Jonah said, like uBlock Origin Lite and I believe AdGuard. Those are like the two options you kind of have right now, and they're going to be significantly better at nuking ads than whatever Mozilla is doing with this easy list ad blocking thing. I think you really need something that is robust rather than something that's just...
AdGuard, I've been using AdGuard on Safari and I've never had any issues. Some people say that they prefer uBlock Origin, but I haven't had a need to switch to it yet. I recently switched to Brave on iOS, but honestly, I cannot remember the reason why right now. But I have been using Brave and it's been all right. So yeah.
I think the main thing that's kind of nice about Brave on iOS is it does allow like background playback of videos and stuff. Whereas with Safari, it's kind of buggy. It doesn't always play in the background. So that is one benefit that Brave does have. I've found. Personally, I've been using Wiper as my ad blocker.
Carrie just mentioned that too, so maybe you can talk about that. Have you liked it?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting way of doing things. It's much more like something I could recommend to someone who's not very tech savvy, and it would be fine. Basically, it's like one of those sort of apps where you just like install it, you open the app, it just nukes all the ads for whatever you're trying to do, and it's kind of simple. They recently added this thing called Filter, which it was a subscription-based thing, I think, but there was also a lifetime option for it, but it utilizes Apple's content filtering tool, like toolkit, which is definitely very interesting. Basically, it can block like system-wide stuff without it needing like access to DNS, which is definitely an interesting additional thing that it does, which I think AdGuard does do that, but it does it through like a VPN or like a DNS method, I believe. Although don't quote me on that because I haven't used that.
Yeah, I know AdGuard was doing that a long time ago via a VPN on iOS, but I have not. I don't use those features on outside of the browser currently, but it does seem cool. And probably, I think probably better than using something like, well, I guess I haven't used it, so I can't say for sure. But I would imagine it could be a bit more fine-grained than using like NextDNS, for example. And doing that locally is a bit nicer. But maybe you'd use them in tandem or something. I don't know. I haven't used Wiper or Filter, but that is interesting to know. I'll have to look into it sometime.
Yeah, I think here's kind of the explanation. Filter is based on a new iOS macOS 26 technology called URL filters, which allows Wiper to block network requests system-wide without having access to any network traffic at all, and with more granularity than previous solutions. It's not a VPN. It's you can use a VPN and Filter at the same time, and you can use Filter and iCloud Private Relay at the same time. So it's definitely an interesting technology that I think, it'd be good to see like uBlock Origin or AdGuard maybe implement something like this too. I think it's good to see, Apple allowing that to be the case. Although I do wonder with Apple, they always seem to allow this sort of stuff, but it's always with a caveat like, oh, we'll allow you to block that if it's like not an Apple traffic. We're not going to allow you to block that if it's like, our tracking, but if it's another company, then it's perfectly fine. So obviously there's concerns with that too, but yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Wiper and Filter. I think it's a nice project.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add about ad blockers. Mozilla's just disappointing. We'll take a look at this TechCrunch article here. Their headline is an unprecedented number of Apple users received a recent spyware alert, say investigators. They say Apple customers have reported receiving a recent threat notification alerting them to suspected spyware attacks targeting their devices, according to experts who investigate these types of incidents. Several people publicly and privately reported receiving Apple's spyware alerts over the weekend after Apple sent out a new wave of notifications on Friday, alerting customers in 100 tech countries that they had been targeted with powerful spyware. So we've seen these before. They say from time to time, the technology giant sends these types of alerts in batches to customers that it believes have been either targeted or compromised with malware that's normally used by governments, which the company refers to as mercenary spyware. In the last few years, Apple says it has alerted people in more than 150 countries. So yeah, a number of these organizations that kind of deal with mobile security have confirmed seeing a lot of them. A senior researcher at the Citizen Lab said, the quote here, "The scale and geographic diversity of public posts about receiving notifications are pretty unprecedented. For every public notification like this, you can imagine there's a huge notification iceberg that the public will never learn about. This is a clear indication that something bigger is going on." The point being, of course, Apple is not like telling people how many people are impacted or like who's impacted or anything like that. So we learn about this, like you said, through people posting that they've received these notifications or people like contacting these organizations, like finding out what to do next because they received this notification. So you only have the information from people who have reported it. But the fact that there are just a ton of reports means that there are likely far more reports going on that they don't know about. So what spyware was in use, I guess we don't know. They said that the volume of people receiving the alerts could also be attributed to Apple's new methods of alerting users. Because starting this year, according to the article, they say Apple now notifies users on their iPhone lock screen in their settings app via the email associated with their Apple account and when users log into their Apple account on the web. Mohammed Al-Meskati, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, said that Apple's new notification method has helped raise awareness of the issue's importance, making it harder for users to ignore. So it is very good that Apple is getting that information out there, like definitely in front of their customers, the people who are impacted. I don't know how these alerts work. I've always kind of wondered what indications Apple gets that enables them to send out these notifications in the first place. Apple is not alone in this because I know Google will alert you when like your Google account has been accessed. I am actually not sure at the moment whether they do any sort of notification system for like Android local malware that doesn't impact your Google account, but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that it's on the rise. Definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, very few people are going to be impacted by this, but Apple constantly says, nobody has ever been hacked that they know of if they're using lockdown mode. So there is always that option, which if you're at risk of this happening to you, that's certainly something that you should keep enabled. But yeah, I don't know if I have more to add beyond that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you added that at the end. I was going to also say, like, at the end of this article, it does say, Apple has said that it's not aware of anyone who had lockdown mode enabled getting hacked. Okay. So as far as we know. So, it's always interesting to hear what I'm sure Apple probably has more insight into how that works. So, obviously we could probably Apple kind of has they kind of benefit from being able to say that, right? Like they're probably not going to want to disclose that someone has been hacked with lockdown mode enabled if they can avoid it, unless there's some sort of public release of information where we find out that that's not the case, then that would kind of hurt that. But yeah, I think if you're one of these people that have been targeted, I think the most interesting thing here was it was kind of just like not really people that were super high profile. This article mentions a Ukraine armed forces soldier, just like a Ukraine armed forces soldier, just like a random soldier. Like that seems kind of um, that seems kind of specific. I thought this sort of attack would mostly be aimed, they probably wouldn't want to burn these sort of attacks on small targets, right? They would probably want to be targeting high profile people because, I'm sure whenever they use these exploits, Apple is probably working out how to fix it and stop it from being able to exploit the person's device. So it's kind of surprising how it was used against someone who, like the article says, someone who isn't that important in the grand scheme of things. So, it's interesting. I think it's also, I've tried to see if anyone that I know has been affected by this. And as far as I know, I don't know anyone that has received any of these notifications. So it'd be interesting to see who the sort of people are that are being attacked by this sort of thing. But it's good that Apple is keeping people alert. I do think it could possibly be improved by the way that it's shown to people because, like this article says, the person that was the Ukrainian soldier said he thought it was a scam. So,
Yeah.
it's possible that there's a way to make it look less like a scam because I think some people would definitely kind of think that, especially if it looks kind of ominous like that.
That is, I mean, yeah, that is just a tricky one to solve. I don't know. But I think like just having the alert everywhere does help with that a bit. But people are, yeah, it's very hard to like train people to like know what is a scam and what isn't. Because like normally that sort of thing, like, oh, you've been hacked is absolutely a scam, right? So it's tricky to tell. But yeah, having it in as many trusted places as possible hopefully improves that situation. I know I was just looking through kind of a related forum post we had about Apple and their privacy. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that earlier, but there's some interesting thoughts there. Had you looked at this yet? I'm just finishing reading it now.
No, does there anything that like stuck out to you from this thread then?
Well, this is a discussion that comes up quite a bit, which is like, how do you know Apple is private, right? Because people do generally use Apple devices, at least in these communities, far more than like Windows, obviously. And I say obviously, but that's not obvious to everyone, and that's kind of why this question comes up. And it kind of gets into, commonly the argument is that like, how can you verify all of the things that Apple says that they're doing is true? Because it's not open source. And I think that we have a whole section on our website dedicated to common misconceptions. And I think one of them is that like open source means that things are private and that closed source means that things aren't private. And that isn't the case because we, like security researchers and other analysts, you can run analysis on like closed source components and proprietary software, and you can like determine what they're doing and what data they're sending out without needing to read the code. Having access to the source code obviously makes that quite a bit easier. Making it proprietary just makes that job harder. So it's nice. It's nicer when it's open source, but like a lot of these things are pretty heavily scrutinized and analyzed. Apple has a program where they'll send security researchers a phone that has a bit more access that they can get into just to search for this kind of stuff. But the main thing is, I think a lot of cases it's focusing on like documentation, what they're claiming to do, and whether like the explanations that they're giving make sense. It's all relative because we can see like plainly, even in documentation from Microsoft themselves, that Windows is an extremely non-private product, right? and we can find vulnerabilities in Windows, and we can find that Microsoft's response to them. I was just talking with Freya about this a few hours ago with Microsoft Recall, but it was like a security researcher found a vulnerability that would basically let any software running on your computer access that recall database if the recall database is unlocked without needing to ask for like permissions or get admin privileges or anything like that. It's just not well protected, and Microsoft was basically like, yeah, that is how the software is designed and we're not going to do anything about it. which happens quite a bit. And then Microsoft builds all of these features into Windows that like plainly just exfiltrate your data or show advertisements or don't keep your data secure. It's just a huge mess. And so a lot of people will recommend these Apple products because relative to the only other like mass market option you can buy, Apple is not doing those things. And then Apple claims that they provide additional protection on top of that. And some of that, like I said, can be analyzed because security researchers do look into that. Some of that you do kind of have to take Apple's word for it. And there have been cases in the past where the privacy standards that Apple claimed that they had weren't being fully implemented by the software that they were pushing out. So it's not perfect, obviously, but it's just like a night and day difference between the other commercial products out there. We don't typically recommend like switching to it though if you're really concerned about privacy or security compared to like using GrapheneOS and or Linux distros that we recommend on our site, for example, because there are improvements you can make. Apple devices phone home a lot. They require a lot of integration with like Apple accounts and the App Store and those services, especially on mobile, but also on desktop. And having all of that non-local stuff running is not good for privacy. It's really not good for security either, but you can definitely improve upon it. But for a lot of people, it's just the middle ground between like software compatibility and not using the burning dumpster fire that is Windows, because at least Apple is not adding all of that crazy stuff. I think that's kind of where it comes down to. There's just a lot of professional tools that only run on like Mac OS or Windows, for example. And when you have to choose between them, there's only one obvious choice you can make.
I think it's also kind of interesting. You can see their these companies' different approaches to things. I think one thing that impressed me quite a lot actually was Apple has, we can talk about, this piece of software that Apple has, it shares a bunch of information with Apple, and it's not as private as it could be. Cough, cough, Apple Music. But I think if you do actually want to see like the information that Apple has on you, they do actually give you they do have pretty good practices when it comes to data portability and data exports. Plus, like I have requested an export from them before, and they gave me all the information that they had stored on me. And I think that is definitely something you could do to see the extent of it, because there is a large extent of information that they do have about you. And I think for some people, if you look at that and you think this is too much information, then clearly that's, you've got to move away from Apple, because that's just information that you have to give them when you use their services. So if you don't want that information collected on you, then you should be using something else. But
yeah,
I think you could definitely do worse. So, if you've got
you could definitely do worse.
if you've got family and friends and they're choosing a laptop, it's probably going to be better if they go with a Mac than a Windows computer, right? Maybe getting them onto Linux is probably not. Some people would argue that's perfectly normal, but I think for a lot of people that's not super possible for them.
I think just like the focus on verification it's kind of an all or nothing approach. Obviously, it would be fantastic if you could verify that every single piece of software that you're doing or that you're using is like perfect and privacy respecting. And if you only run like vetted software on Linux or GrapheneOS, for example, you can do that, but not a lot of people are doing that for a wide variety of reasons, and you kind of have to fall back on what the software companies are claiming that they're doing. And the fact is that, like, regardless of whether they're actually doing it, Apple at least is claiming that they're not doing all of the things that like Microsoft or Google is doing. And they have a good track record of protecting customers from security incidents so far. And they have like for a lot of the more security focused features like contact key verification on iMessage, or like memory tagging extension in the latest iPhones, or like advanced data protection. They have extensive documentation of like the decisions that they made, what cryptography they're using, how it all works on like the Apple security blog, for example, is one good resource. And at the very least, what we can tell about Apple is that generally, in a lot of cases, they know what they're doing. They're capable of building the systems that they are claiming to be building, which is more than you can say about a lot of people who are developing privacy and security focused software. And so it's kind of like a no log audit situation with VPNs, where like you got to trust a VPN at the end of the day, and like you have to trust Apple at the end of the day here to take their claim seriously. But no log audits with VPNs has a purpose, which is that, like, yeah, they could just enable logs immediately after the audit takes place, but a no log audit shows that that VPN company is capable of disabling logging across all of their stack, which is harder to do than you might think. Like, just to say all of the software that they have to use in like Linux and across their systems probably logs by default. So having to go through and disable all of that and make sure nothing is persistently stored is not like super trivial. And so at least finding out that they have done it correctly and they haven't inadvertently left logging on somewhere, it tells you something about it, even if it doesn't tell you like whether or not they're actually doing it. I think a similar situation is happening here with Apple, where like Apple is just telling you what they're doing, how it makes sense. And if you want to use Apple products, you kind of just have to trust it, compared to Microsoft, who's telling you that they're not doing those things usually.
I do think, unfortunately, we are kind of seeing Apple move towards, if there's going to be any company that does the AI integration, I guess I'd be the company that I trust the most with doing that in the right way is Apple. But again, iOS 27, or I guess OS 27 is kind of looking like it's going to be, Apple heading in this AI agent direction. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I think that is one of those things that is opt-in, which is good. It's like one of these things where you set up your device and it says, do you want this? And you select what you want. Whereas as far as I know, a lot of this stuff on Windows is just like enabled by default, or like heavily pushed to be enabled by default. So it's going to be interesting to see how Apple manages security and stuff. We got a comment here from CamViewZ. Hey, first time catching you live. Cheers. Yeah, nice to see you here. We also got another comment from Terracotta Pie 6872, and they just did like the smiling emoji. So hello.
Glad you made it on the stream. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what direction Apple goes in, because I think the AI direction, like we talked earlier, is like one of those kind of dangerous areas where it's something that can be exploited. And I do wonder if maybe all these AI features are just disabled in lockdown mode or something. That would definitely be a choice. Whether that happens, I'm not sure.
I don't think Apple Intelligence gets disabled in lockdown mode. Although the ChatGPT thing might. It doesn't?
It doesn't, no.
Can you link to ChatGPT too?
Yes, it does let you So
Yeah,
that's
figures.
also one of those things. It's like, it'll be interesting to see. I haven't actually downloaded the beta. Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should try out the beta. I'm not really sure. I'm usually against running that on.
I do have a phone with the beta around here somewhere. I'll have to take a look at it. I don't have it like right next to me, but
Okay.
yeah, definitely need to do that because we gotta make sure the guide is up to date too. Firewalls don't stop dragons. Carrie said, I'm also very interested to see how Apple approaches AI privacy. This is, you mentioned the private cloud compute thing. I guess it's somewhat privacy security related. It also just like bothers me, technology wise. I don't like this reliance that a lot of these companies are starting to have on like verifiable cloud compute. I know there's a lot of these AI companies coming out with similar systems, and Apple certainly seems the most extensive because they can kind of control the entire stack because they're using their own custom CPUs basically, whereas everyone else is relying on NVIDIA or Intel to kind of provide these security features on top of everything else. But I think it's problematic that we are. I mean, we talked about this earlier with like the increasing prices of phones and that expensive Motorola phone that's going to run GrapheneOS. Like, there is so much effort being put into taking compute away from like local people, like owning it on your device and like shoving it into a data center where you have to rent access to it basically. I think it's, to me, all of this AI stuff kind of just seems like the next generation of like milking everyone for all they're worth subscription model that Adobe really pioneered, and now I think every single other tech company wants to adopt. And so yeah, I'm really not happy with all of this hardware being moved to the cloud, to data centers. No matter how private it is, it's also like not that private. They're still it's still processing like all of this information in a non-encrypted manner, right? It's, the security features are, again, they're kind of guardrails like we talked about before, where they're in place to like kind of they're self-imposed policies to like make it harder for people to gain unauthorized access to this stuff. But at the end of the day, your data is not end-to-end encrypted. Somebody could have access to it at these companies, and that is just it's a different security model than like the encrypted, or like than doing everything local or having like everything encrypted end to end where only you have the keys. And so yeah, I guess I just don't personally like it. I think we could come up with a better solution. I wish there was more focus on local compute. And there just doesn't seem to be right now because it's a lot more profitable to continue owning all of the computer hardware in the world instead of letting other people buy it.
Yeah, I've been doing some research in my personal time about a lot of, I'm sure everyone here has been to the doctor at some point and they've been asked, is it okay if I use my AI note-taking tool to record this session? And a lot of these tools, like they will literally be sending data to OpenAI and it will just be a zero retention system. It's basically them just saying, we pinky promise we're not gonna save it. Like that's it's like, you know, it's really is that paper thin. And yeah, there's not really, I think one thing that we were thinking of adding to the website, which maybe you can talk a bit more about this because this is kind of like a technical thing, but it's the homomorphic encryption of this sort of thing, like where it can be processed on a remote server, but also be end-to-end encrypted. I'm not sure if that's something that would ever take off though, because it does increase the processing cost.
Everything that I've seen indicates, I know Carrie just brought this up in the chat too, that it's too slow currently. That's absolutely the case. It's too slow to do almost anything. Right now it's used in like, I think Apple even uses it for some sort of context searching feature. I don't remember exactly what it's used for, but it basically like searches for one thing in a database in an encrypted way so Apple can't see what you're searching for. And there's other like very tiny implementations like that, but homomorphic encryption, everything that I've seen indicates that it has like no potential to be used in anything even remotely as complex as AI. And so I have no hope that that will ever be the case in the cloud. And I posted about that. I posted a lot more stuff about that like a year ago on the forum. I would have to go dig through those posts and try and find that for more information and like links and stuff. But that's my impression of that at the moment. Lumo, I don't know what Lumo is doing right now exactly. I know that a lot of these private AI companies are mainly focused on like protecting your chat history, and you can store that locally with encryption, which is of course good. I mean, it would be bad to like have all of your historical data leaked, and that's kind of a similar situation with like email, where you can't encrypt email end to end unless everyone implements that, but you can at least store your emails with encryption so you can't get like wrapped up in a data breach later. But where is I going with this? At the end of the day, like the data that's being processed by these AI companies it's still in plain text. And like Terracotta Pie just said exactly. I also really don't want people to get used to the state where everything is in the cloud. I think that that's the biggest problem to me, because not only just from a technology standpoint, but if we tie this back to privacy, there's so much metadata that can be obtained by these cloud companies about like what you're doing, how much compute power you're using when you're using it, etc. That has real privacy impact, no matter like how protected the data itself is. It's also just that eternal renter mentality that isn't good. I knew that like this was taking a downhill turn quite a while ago. I remember watching a Linus Tech Tips video where he was like, "Oh, cloud gaming is actually pretty good now," and I was like, "Oh no, oh no, the PC guy is giving up on local gaming. He's talking about cloud gaming." That's the sort of thing where like, yeah, it is good for consumers right now because it is cheaper than buying a gaming PC, but it's so expensive to buy a gaming PC because of all these cloud companies making it so expensive. So, yeah, all of the cloud stuff it's a huge problem. It's very, very unfortunate direction that everything is going in. And I'm just glad I bought a lot of RAM before all of this happened. So I'm set for a little bit. Can't help the rest of you. Sorry.
Yeah, that is lucky. I did get all my hardware a little bit before everything started crashing. But I think one thing that's interesting about the Brave Leo versus like Proton Lumo, I think the benefit of those two specific ones is they control the infrastructure behind these AI models. So Lumo is run by Proton. It's running on their servers. Leo is running on Brave's infrastructure. So, I think that is that's like one little bit of a benefit where, these companies are probably going to take the necessary steps to make sure that this is processed in a way that is not able to be linked back to you. That's like one small bump above just trusting these massive AI companies, which I don't think you could really trust them, just considering their entire history of, scraping the entire internet for information and using it to train their models. I don't think they really care that much about privacy. So I would kind of take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, like we would suggest running something locally, but again, that has the same thing that Jonah was talking about, where hardware is kind of ridiculously expensive right now, and in small part due to these, AI companies that need all this processing power to run these models. Firewalls don't stop dragons just said, I want a kick butt server at home where all my AI processing happens. I can see Apple eventually offering that. I would consider a DGX Spark if it meant 100% local frontier level AI, $5,000. Yeah, it's definitely not something that is within consumer reach. I think, not many people can justify spending $5,000 on a server for AI processing locally, unfortunately.
And I'm sure Apple will not go in that direction. It is a shame that Apple got out of the server business, because like they should just have iCloud like be self-hostable. They kind of were in that direction and they left it. I've talked about that before, just in the sense of like Apple kind of giving up on the educational and enterprise game a bit by leaving the server market, because like Google Workspace and Microsoft are so much better at managing devices. But like yeah, it would be cool if I could buy a Mac Pro and run Apple Private Compute Cloud on that for AI, like at my own house instead of in a rack in Apple's data center. But I don't think that they will release those servers, unfortunately. But it would certainly be cool.
Yeah, it is a bit ridiculous. I was looking at like how much Mac Studios are, and somehow the Mac Studio I bought back in 2023 is worth more now than it was back then. Somehow, I don't even know how that's possible, but it apparently is.
No.
So.
I know. I wish, yeah, I have a Mac Studio. I wish I had got it with more RAM. I mean, obviously now, but like, should have known. Should have known. CamView Z said they almost got their first cold wallet. Was it going to be a cold card wallet or just any hardware wallet? Let me know. And now I kind of feel like I'm out of luck. If you guys have another solution, I'm all ears. What kind of solution are you looking for? Because there are a lot of different hardware wallet options, but typically it comes down to two of them for cryptocurrency, which is Ledger or Trezor on my end, because those are the only ones that have good Monero support, basically. If you don't need that, there's other options, but I don't know nearly as much about them because I would have no reason to look into it, because we only focus on privacy things for the site. But yeah, if you are looking for something specific, you can definitely share in the chat. I don't know if we have any chats. I see you just shared that there. I was going to look up and see what hardware wallets were supported by the Monero.com app, but I guess I don't have it installed on my phone.
Yeah, that is a very good question. I think it is one of those categories that I feel like we've been thinking of adding to the site. I know I did see you were working on something related to that, so I think that would be a good topic to eventually get to. But it is one of those things where crypto wallets are expensive, some of them at least. So it's like one of those things where it's like tricky to get hardware as well, because you have to test all of that as well.
Yeah. I mean, if I was going to use like a hardware wallet, I would use it with Cake Wallet probably. And the only three that they support are Ledger and Trezor and Cold Card, which obviously I would not use one of those because of that gigantic problem that they just had. So yeah, there's really only two options out there, and I like them both. I actually like Ledger more, but that's just a little bit more. But that's controversial because people like Trezor a lot. And you can pick whatever you want. I don't know if it really makes a huge difference. Anything, it's very similar with like just security keys for protecting your accounts. Like anything you can do to not have your private keys on an internet connected device is going to be a huge improvement over what everyone else is doing. At least in theory, not in practice in the cold card case, but to prevent something like that, you could follow my video tutorial on how to make a Bitcoin seed phrase using a six-sided die. We have it on our YouTube channel, and you'll probably want to do that no matter what hardware you use because of the risk of problems like that. Yes.
I'm not really seeing any more questions here. So if anyone has any more things that they want us to talk about or that they were curious about, definitely leave those before we wrap up this week's show.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw any forum posts this week that I wanted to talk about. I know, yeah, I've been working on the verified app stuff a bit, getting more stuff added to the database. So it's kind of taken up some time working on not the password tier video. Nate did that, but I'm putting together a messenger tier list video that will come out sometime. So you can all look forward to that
Soon.
as well. Gary asked, how was DEF CON? It was an interesting experience. It was definitely a lot of fun. And sometimes I just have to go to places to like see what it's like, get a feel for things, and then plan out a lot of things that I want to do next year. So I'll have to go back now and do more of those things now that I kind of have the lay of the land a bit. Again, I did a show live with Nate when I was at DEF CON here, and I thanked Carrie for this, but I'll thank you again for showing me around, especially the first day, and getting me through all of those lines and stuff, showing me where all the interesting stuff is at DEF CON. So that was good. But yeah, a lot of stuff to think about for next year, and definitely will be planned more in advance because I kind of winged it at the last second, which probably wasn't like the most amazing move, but it was better than not going. I will say that. So I'm glad that I went. We'll have to think of other conferences that we could look at too. I don't know what everyone goes to. I saw a lot of people going to Hope, which is like a week after DEF CON or something like that, which is not good timing. Because I don't think a lot of people are going to go to two events at once. But there's also like European ones that other people on the Privacy Guides team have talked about. It'd be cool. It'd be cool to go to some of those other events. If anyone has suggestions of places to check out, definitely let me know.
Yeah, would definitely be. I heard you gave out a lot of stickers, so hopefully there's a bunch of people out there rocking Privacy Guide stickers now.
Yeah, if you got a sticker from me or just laying around at DEF CON, I got rid of a lot of them. I don't know where they ended up, most of them, but send a picture of them on social media or something. That'd be very cool. Cannabitter just said a lot of people go to Monerotopia. Personally, I have no desire to return to Monerotopia after I think I went the very first year, because Henry from Techlore was invited to speak at it, and I just went along with him at the time. And that was definitely an interesting conference to say the least. But all those cryptocurrency conferences, that's not really my scene. I haven't looked into any of those post Techlore, so I don't know if that's in the cards for me, unfortunately. But I don't know. If a lot of you are going to Monerotopia for some reason and think it'd be cool, I guess I could look into it again. But probably not at the top of my list.
I never understood why they why would you put your conferences so close together?
Yeah, I don't know. Carrie just mentioned a lot. I know there's B-Sides. B-Sides Las Vegas is like right before DEF CON, and like that sort of thing makes sense because it's in the same city, same hotels. You just stay for longer. Hope is like across the country, basically. Like, why would you have that right after DEF CON? That does not make any sense. But yeah, there are some cool ones. I'd like to go to B-Sides Las Vegas next year, before DEF CON. I think that'd be fun. Got a question. My dog is really antsy right now. What is going on? Terracotta Pie, how big a threat do you think is the fact that on Android apps are able to see what other apps are installed via the query section in Android Manifest? I mean, that is also the case on iOS, so it's not more of a threat. Yeah, that's the sort of thing where, like, I don't know how challenging. I mean, I don't know like what a good solution to that would be, because there's a lot of reasons you would want to be able to access that information, and like having to individually grant permissions for every single thing an app does is challenging. But Yeah, if you're concerned about this, I think the answer is probably to isolate like sensitive apps in private space or in another user profile, because then they can't communicate with each other. They're essentially different profiles.
Yeah, and I think, depending on your operating system, like there was this kind of interesting app by Misk called Loop on iOS as well, and that also shows, it doesn't matter what platform you're on. These apps do have access to quite a lot of information about your device. So if you're like Jonah said, if you're worried about an app seeing that you've got another app installed, maybe it should be in a different profile. Maybe it should be on a different device. I guess on iOS, you don't really have much choice. You kind of just have to install it in the same place. So I think you're still better off in general on Android, because you do get those extra profiles, which can help to mitigate that somewhat.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always information that apps need to have specifically so that they can work. So I'm not really sure if they need to see every app you have installed, though. That could be something that could be tightened, I think.
So I guess to answer your question, Terracotta Pie, what threat models this might be a threat, it depends on what apps you have installed more than anything. Depends what you want to keep hidden. But yeah, it's hard because like if an app needs to communicate with another app for any reason, it's hard to build restrictions that aren't just like whitelisting what's allowed, which would be very complex.
Yeah. I think we could always, use the obvious apps that are a concern. It's like, reproductive health apps, dating apps, financial apps. I think those sort of things, maybe there is a concern if an app knowing what other app you have installed could reveal something about you that you don't want that app to know.
I'm curious whether, I guess you'd have to use private spaces for this probably on Android. I know like on iOS, when you hide an app, that does hide it from a lot of other areas of the operating system. And so like there are options to hide specific apps from people looking at your device or from other apps on your device. I don't think the new feature we just talked about with Android is going to do that, but private space should do that. Terracotta Pie says, I hope they would add blocking of IPC to GrapheneOS. I thought I heard something about them planning on doing that, but yeah, it's not there yet. I don't know what the status is on that, or if they can do that, but it would be very cool to have like it as an option, especially in an operating system like GrapheneOS that already enables like non-standard permissions, like the ability to block network access to an app, which is an incredibly cool feature, except there's sometimes some exfiltration that can happen between apps because they can talk to each other, so that is a concern. So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff to think about with mobile phones. It's why I'm not like a huge fan of mobile phones for privacy in general. I think that the privacy model on desktop computers makes a lot more sense, and you can do a lot more isolation if you want. The smartphones are just designed with convenience first above all else. That's how both Android and iOS are designed, and so they're gonna have trade-offs like that, just by design, basically.
Yeah, definitely getting better. You're getting better isolation than you are on a desktop operating system, though. I think that's definitely another thing to consider. It's still better than nothing, but it's definitely, it could go further. Yeah, Loop is cool, worth checking out. Yeah, I just reckon download Loop and like see what information Terracotta said that they are using GrapheneOS, but if you're on iOS, you can download the Loop app, and it does give you quite a lot of information about what apps can see on your device. And I'm kind of surprised no one has made the same thing for Android, which would be interesting. Maybe someone should make that. That would be kind of a nice app to have as well, to be able to see that information. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more comments here, so I guess we can start. Almost about to hit the 2-hour mark, so I guess we could probably start wrapping up here.
Yeah, I think we can probably call it. I did see that post on 44 Media. I think Nate shared it in one of our chats, but that was a great protest. Darth Vader went to a city council meeting, talking about how he was in favor of Flock because it would help the Empire. Find that article on 44 Media if you're interested in reading that, because there's some good quotes from that for sure. But yeah, it is great that people are standing up against Flock. With that said, I think we can probably wrap things up here. Just to remind you, all of the updates that we talk about on This Week in Privacy, we share them on our blog every week, and we email them out. So you can sign up for the newsletter, or you can subscribe with your favorite RSS reader if you want to stay tuned about episodes and you want to get links to everything that we talked about. The video recording of this will also be synced to PeerTube, so you can access it later if you want to watch it there. Privacy Guides, we're a nonprofit, impartial organization focused on building a strong privacy advocacy community and delivering the best digital privacy and consumer technology rights advice on the internet. So if you want to support our mission, you can make a donation on our website at privacyguides.org/donate. To make a donation, you can click the red heart icon in the top right corner of the page. You can contribute using standard fiat currency via debit or credit card, or opt to donate anonymously using Monero or your favorite cryptocurrency. Becoming a paid member will unlock exclusive perks like early access to video content, priority during the Q&A, you'll get a cool badge on your profile on the Privacy Guides forum, and you'll get the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting independent media like ours. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.